This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit their website at www.3dconnection.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 22. Now today we're going to be talking about making your own custom textures for Sketchup out of images that you take of real-world items. So things like, you could do this with wood flooring, we're going to be doing it with tiles for a fireplace, but you can do it with almost anything, and it's actually really easy. Let me show you how. So this is the model that we're going to be working in today, and as you can see, it's just an in-progress fireplace. I've got a nice fireplace here, a hearth, some wall behind it, and some flooring. Now the wall I've just made a nice yellow color, and the floor I've already applied one of the textures that's built into SketchUp, one of the wood textures. Now if you're not familiar with how to apply some of the built-in textures in SketchUp to objects, go back and watch our episode on using textures in SketchUp, the built-in ones, because we're going to be using some of the similar techniques in this episode. And if you're familiar with that, it's going to make things a lot easier. But today we're going to learn how to apply some custom photo textures. And I'm going to show you two of the different ways you can do it. One of the ways is to just apply one photo to one face. So in other words, I have a picture of an actual fireplace that will fit right in here. Nice fireplace grate photo that we're going to apply here. And then I also have a picture of some tile that we're going to adjust so that it will actually fill this entire surrounding border right here, as well as this hearth. So let me show you the textures that I'm going to be working with today. I have over on my desktop here, I have this photo right here. Let me just make it a little bit smaller so you can see. I have this photo here, which we're only going to be using this part right here. So I have this photo here that we're going to be using, and then for the tile, you can see the tile around here, but we're not going to be using that photo for the tile. I actually have a much better photo of tile right here. So this is the photo that we're going to be using for the tile on these edges right around here. So these are the photos we're going to be using. Now you want to make sure that you have your photos somewhere where you can get to them. On your desktop is where I like to keep mine. And I'll just close these out. Now the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you the kind of simplistic way to apply a photo in SketchUp. One where you don't have to worry about things duplicating. And I'll tell you what I mean by duplicating in a minute. But let's just start with the simple way to do things. So I want to apply this photo of this grate right here. I want to apply that to this face in SketchUp here. What I like to do is I like to do a little bit of prep work on my photos first. So I'm actually just going to open up this fireplace photo. In this case, I'm on a Mac, so I'm using the built-in kind of a photo viewer called Preview, but you can open it up in any image editor you want. You might be using Photoshop or whatever, just some kind of a basic tool that really all you need to do is just crop things. So because I only want this grate right here, I don't need all this other stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crop it down so that the only thing I have left is this grate with a little bit of air around it. So I'm just going to draw a rough, quick little selection box here. And you can use whatever image editor you want, just crop it down. Nothing too specific. I want to give myself a little bit more air. Do give yourself some air around the edges because you are going to need that. That looks pretty good. So I'll just crop that and save it. There we go. So this is more like it. This is much tighter. I've just gotten rid of quite a bit of image that now SketchUp doesn't need to store. So always kind of crop your images down before you import them into SketchUp. It'll save you a lot of headache later on. So I'll go ahead and close that. And now I'm ready to import this image into SketchUp. Now, what you do is, first of all, make sure that the face that you want to apply this image to is selectable. So make sure that, if it's like in a group, for example, make sure you're in that group and you can get to that face. You don't have to select that face first, but it's just kind of a nice little marker for me so that I remember this is the face I want. And then the next step is to go up to File, the File menu here, and then go down to Import. Now when you say import, it's going to give you a nice browser, and it's going to let you browse all the files on your computer. You can just choose the one you want and import it. But make sure, down here, you notice you get two drop downs here. The first one's called Format. Now, at the moment, it's set to all supported image types. That is what you want. You want to make sure that, I don't know why, but it also has things where it can make it so that you can only select JPEG images or Photoshop images or PDF files. But you can also import Sketchup files, other Sketchup projects, or things from Google Earth, for example. Make sure that all supported image types is set to the format if you're importing an image. And that way all these images will pop up right here. And you can see there is my fireplace image. So I'll just click on it once. Gives me a nice little preview. Now, the next step is to make sure that this drop down here is set to the correct option. If I click on it, you notice we got 3 options. Use as image, which would import it just as kind of an image. It would be its own object, its own face with the image applied to it. Use as texture, which will allow me to basically paint this image onto an existing face in SketchUp, which is what I want to do. And use as new matched photo. Photo matching is a very cool feature in SketchUp that is a very advanced feature. We're going to be covering that in a later episode. For now, just make sure that you have it set to use as texture, and that's it. So make sure everything's good. You have your image selected, all supported image types, use as texture, and then just click import. Now when this happens, we get a nice little preview of our image. Now this hasn't been applied to anything yet. We need to actually choose which face we want to paint it onto and where we want to paint it. So I want to paint it onto this face right here. So what I'm going to do is, and you notice my icon, I have a little paint bucket icon, that's my cursor actually, at the bottom left hand corner of the image. So what I want to do is I want to click where I want the bottom left hand corner of the image to be. Now I don't need to get too specific here. I'm just going to click right around there, and now I've clicked once, and now I can drag this out, make the image as big or as small as I want. Now if I wanted to, I could enter in a custom value into my dimensions box. It says height. If I knew that, oh, I want this fireplace to be this high or something like that, I could go ahead and do that. But because I'm going to be adjusting this image quite a bit using SketchUp's texture editing tools, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to kind of make it so it fits within this texture or this face kind of nicely, nice and snug, and then I'll click again, and now deselect the image. It has applied it to that image. Okay. Now you'll notice we've got this weird stuff going on around the edges here. Because I didn't make it so the image would fill the entire face perfectly, to make up for the gaps, it actually tiles the image. It actually duplicates the image and makes a big grid of images to fill up all the empty space. So it looks a little bit weird right now, but don't worry, we are going to fix that. So right now it's kind of weird looking. It doesn't look very real at all because we've got all this extra stuff around here. It's distorted. It's just not looking very good. So the next step is to start using SketchUp's texture editing tools to kind of tweak how this photo looks on this face. And to do that, what you do is you select the face that has the photo applied to it. Then you're going to right click on it. Now down here we have this drop down menu within the drop down menu called texture, and over here we get a little pop up with these options here. Now in this case, the one I want to go texture and then position, because I want to change the position of the texture. And when you do that, for one thing, you can see it gives me a kind of a ghostly image of how it's tiling that photo, so you can see what exactly I mean by the image grid that it's using to fill up all these spaces. Now at the moment, we're in what's called the fixed pin texture editing mode. I know it's a little bit weird, but let me explain. over here, at each corner of the image, you now have these little push pins. You got a blue one here, a yellow one here, a green one down here, and a red one over here. At the moment, each one of these pins will do a different thing if I drag on them. So for example, the red one, if I hover over it, it says drag pin to move texture. So I can just click and drag on this pin and it adjusts where exactly the texture is within the face. Now if I were to go to the blue one, this blue one is basically it's skew. So I can drag this up, down, left, right to adjust its skew. This yellow pin I can use to distort it by kind of dragging this corner wherever I want, kind of a funhouse mirror effect. And lastly, I have the green pin down here, which I can use to adjust its rotation and kind of its scale. So that's pretty cool, but I've always found these kind of tools to be a little bit clunky, and I could never really get them to do exactly what I wanted. Much more intuitive, if you ask me, is the non-fixed pin editing mode. So while I'm in the texture position edit mode, if I right click again, you notice I get a new set of options here. I have done, which will get me out of this texture editing mode. I have reset and flip and rotate and all kinds of stuff, but I also have this option that says fixed pins, which is currently checked. If I uncheck fixed pins, you notice that the colors all go away, and now I've just got 4 kind of yellowish tan colored push pins. This is a mode that I like very much, and I'll show you why. So what I can do is all of these pins, if I click and drag on any one of these pins, I can basically adjust where that corner or where that point is. Now I know at the moment it's like how do you think this is easier? This is looking really weird. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Clicking and dragging is nice, but before you click and drag when you're not in fixed pin mode, you click once. So let me just click once on this push pin. I'll zoom in for you. Let me click once on this push pin. Now when that happens, you notice that now when I move my cursor around, the push pin moves with me, but the image stays basically where it is. That's because I have now kind of taken the push pin out of the board, if you will, and now I can put the push pin wherever I want. Now I've got 4 push pins, one for each corner of the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put these push pins at the 4 corners of this grate right here. So I'll just find this is the bottom left-hand pin, so I'll just find the bottom left-hand corner of this grate. You don't have to be too precise, you can just eyeball it, but you can see that right around here seems to be the corner. I'm going to catch a little bit of this foot right here, but that's no big deal. But you can see I've got the line of the grate right here, and the line of the grate right here, and those two intersect right around there. So I've just clicked once again, and I've stuck the push pin in there. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this push pin. That's an easy one. Stick it right there. Do this again right here. And you would do this with the 4 corners of whatever object it was that you were trying to use as a texture. Put that pin there. So now I've got these 4 pins that are basically at the 4 corners of this grate. Now the next step is to grab each of these push pins and drag that point to where I want it. Now what's so cool about the non-fixed pin mode is that if I click and drag on these push pins now, I can drag it wherever I want, but I'm grabbing it by that corner. So it's kind of like basically just allowing me to choose where exactly it is I want to grab that corner to distort it. And what's really cool is now I have, through the ghostly outline of the image, I can still see my face. So I'll leave that push pin there for a moment. I can still see this outline of my face right here. This is what I want the grate to completely fill. Now if I zoom in on this top left corner here, I can grab and drag this push pin around, and this push pin will actually snap to that corner. And now I can release and let it go. That push pin is exactly at that corner. And because that push pin is locked to the corner of the grate lines up with the corner of the face now. So let me show you Again, at the moment, it still doesn't look that great, but I'm just going to drag this push pin right here, snap it there, snap this guy here, and the last one, snap this guy here. And now when I zoom out, see that? You can still see the ghostly outline of the edges of the image. So this is the part that I didn't use. But now, when I right-click on the image and say Done, look at that. It's been warped and distorted like crazy. If you were to look at this image in any other context, normally it would look completely bizarre. But in SketchUp, this is absolutely pretty much perfect. For now, I want to thank the people who make this show possible, 3D Connection. These guys, as I'm sure you know by now, they make the Space Navigator, and I absolutely love that thing to death. It's the only way I will navigate in SketchUp now. It is absolutely fantastic. It's like a joystick. That's what I keep telling everyone. It's like a joystick that you can grab and just move around within your model. And one of the things that I absolutely love about it is that it is so customizable. When you install the driver for the Space Navigator, you get a preference pane that on a Mac looks something like this. On a PC, it's a very similar thing. And you can choose all of these different settings here. You can choose the speed and the sensitivity of the navigator. So like I've got mine turned up pretty high because I'm a speed junkie. But you can also change the zoom direction if you want to make it so that instead of pushing forward and backward to zoom, you can lift up and down to zoom. You can do that. You can calibrate it. You can even choose, it has two buttons on either side of the navigator that you can choose commands for in SketchUp. So, for example, I have my right button on my Space Navigator set to switch to a certain mode in SketchUp that I really like, and I have the left button set to open up the preference pane. But it has all kinds of other things. You could have them locked to tools in SketchUp. Have one of the buttons set to the selection tool and one of the buttons set to the rectangle tool if you wanted. You've got to check this thing out. If you want to learn more about it, just visit 3D Connection's website at 3dconnection.com. And that's 3dconnexion.com. I want to thank them so much for their support of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. So now it's time to start working on our tile. Now, as I'm sure you know, or as I'm sure you remember, this is the image that I took of my tile. Now, of course, before I import it into SketchUp, step one is to crop it and get rid of the excess that I don't need. In the case of tile, I like to go with 4 squares. That way, they'll still repeat, but that way you don't look at that and think, okay, this is the same square over and over again. So I'll just select around that and crop it. There we go, that's all I need. So I'll go ahead and save that now. And now I will go ahead and import it into SketchUp. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is what you would think you would do. What you would think you would do is you would just, select your face, go import, select the tile, use as texture, say import, and then what you would do is you would click down here and just kind of go like that. And then you could go into your position modes, and then you could just kind of stretch this thing out to wherever you wanted it. But this is where you run into difficulties, is that you can't crop this kind of thing precisely. And as such, pretty much the best you can do in terms of tiling is this. And you can see that this does not look like tile at all. This just looks horrible because I can't get it to tile correctly in this mode. So I've sort of developed my own technique of doing this that is I've found really the easiest way to do it without having to go into something like Photoshop and do a bunch of tweaking around before you even import it into SketchUp. This is what I prefer to do. So the first step is actually, I don't use the face that I'm going to apply it to. Instead, I'm actually going to draw a separate square. Now, I've got my tile here, and this is going to be the part that I want. What I want to do is I want to first figure out how big I want this square of tile to be. Now I'm thinking each tile is about 4 inches, so I'm going to make this an 8-inch square. I'm going to go ahead and go back into SketchUp, and I'm just going to, real quick with the rectangle tool, draw an 8 by 8 inch square. Okay? Go ahead and reverse the faces so that I've got the white side facing me. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in nice and tight on it so I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to go to File, Import, Tile, Import, and I'm just going to add this, be kind of loosey-goosey about this. And now, this is looking pretty familiar, isn't it? It's not looking too great. This is what we're going to do, though. I'm going to right-click and go to Texture, Position, and now it's kept me in my freeform pin mode. I don't really know what you would call it. The mode that isn't fixed pin mode, basically. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting my pins down. And I'm putting my pins, you notice I've got this gray strip of grout in between all the tiles. I'm putting my pin right in the middle. I'm not putting my pin right there, right on the edge of the tile, because I do want some grout. But if I were to put my pin all the way out here, I would get 2 bands of grout whenever it repeated. So by putting it right in the center, I will get a border of half a band of grout around the whole thing. And then when it repeats, there'll be half a band of grout here, and then on the other side, another half band. So put that together, you get one whole band of grout. It's a little bit confusing, but after a while you start to kind of envision what things will look like once you've tiled them. So I'll go ahead and put these pins here. And now the next step is to just grab these pins and stretch them to the 4 corners of my 8-inch square. And done. Now you can see that looks really good, right? That right there looks normal. If it was just if I was just going for 4 squares of tile, I'd be done. But if I right-click on my image and say Texture Position, see, I've still got all this border stuff on the outside, and it's including that in its tile. Even though I can't see it on this shape, still including it. So how do you get rid of that? This is what I've discovered. If you right-click on the image and then say, right below Texture, you notice you have this command, Make Unique Texture. If you select that, it looks like nothing happened. But right-click, Texture Position. Look at that. You can see the ghostly outline of all the tiled images, and they're tiling perfectly now. By doing that, it basically gets rid of all of the parts of the image that you can't see. So it basically makes it so that the only parts of the image you see are what is on your physical face that you've created here. So by making it look good, basically making one tile of the image look good on this square here, and then saying Make Unique Texture, it basically makes it so it will tile correctly now. So by just sampling this new image now and pasting it on these outlines here, look at that. That's a beautiful thing, if you ask me. I just love looking at that. And you can see what I mean by it tiling it. Even though we only have 4 squares of tile, it looks like this is, dozens and dozens of them. And they all look completely unique. They look different. And they're tiling beautifully. I mean, if you zoom in really, really close, you can see these kind of parts here where the images don't quite line up, but for a SketchUp model, this is absolutely just fine. And now the only thing left to do is just apply it to the hearth right here. You can see they even line up with the grout right here. And there we go. So then the last thing to do is just select my old texture, remove it, and there we go. So now my fireplace is completely done. Custom photo textures are one of my favorite ways to add polish to a model when you're done with it, and it also makes it so that you don't have to model little details. If you just have a photo of it, that's sometimes all you need for the really small details. And it's also great for things like flooring. You can do this with, actually a lot of companies that make flooring, you can actually go to their website and download sample images of their flooring, and those are actually usually already tile friendly, and you need to do absolutely nothing with those. So really cool stuff. Now, if you want to visit our website, it's www.harwoodpodcast.com. I'll have the lesson file for this episode as well as the texture images that I used so that you can go ahead and follow along with this episode if you want. And if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, any ideas for future shows or something like that, you can send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. Until next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.